Another exciting episode, and it genuinely is going to be an exciting episode this time, as this time we have Dr. Dale Childs joining us, as well as the usual suspects, Alex, Tim, Andy, and myself. And today we're going to be talking about a whole host of interesting stuff. But first of all, Andy, how nice of you to join us.
Sorry, I put some new security features on my laptop, and it's I forgot actually. I couldn't work out why the camera wasn't on, but you had to put one of those sliders across.
I was going to say, Andy, who would be interested in hacking your computer? That's everyone's burning question. So let's go around and introduce ourselves quickly first. Alex.
Good morning, all. My name is Alex Abbott, founder of Supero.
I'm Adam Gray, co-founder of the LA Ignite. Tim.
I'm Tim Hughes. I'm CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm probably famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Andy.
I haven't written any books. I'm really crap on social selling, but I did found the Institute of Sales Professionals, and I am a fellow lecturer like Dr. Dale, but at Cranfield, not Bournemouth.
And Dale, how lovely. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Saving the best till last, you see.
I'm sure that's not the case. So I've been around for sales for a while. I worked in sales, more B2C side, but a little bit B2B over in America as well, just temporarily. And then I did my PhD at Loughborough in sales, looked at how confidence became negative to performance. And now I'm a senior lecturer in sales at Bournemouth University.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I can vouch that he's tidied his office up, because when I saw it a couple of weeks ago, it did not look like that.
You haven't seen the other side of the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's so nice to see people making an effort. I say people, I mean obviously everyone except you, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I need to give Tim some ammunition, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Oh, he's got plenty. Don't worry. So there are a couple of things that have come out of our conversations with you, Dr. Dale. So one of them is mental health in the workforce. And a couple of days ago, you published an article on LinkedIn, which was, frankly, quite terrifying about Gen Z and millennials and their mental health struggles in the workplace, and particularly those in sales, with that figure 89% or up to 89% of salespeople reporting burnouts and 25 being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression. I mean, this is shocking stuff. So we've got that, but we've also got, following on from last week's conversation, the use of AI to help measure salesperson performance, because one of our certainly for Tim and Alex and myself, one of the banes of our life is that we work with organizations and salespeople are often KPI'd on things that are ineffective or even positively damaging to their sales performance. So how many cold calls have you made this week, Dale? Well, actually, nobody ever answers my cold calls. And every time I cold call someone, half the chances that they'll read one of my emails. But still, that's a measure, as is sending emails. And people wonder why, actually, when I do get the opportunity to interact with you, you don't want to talk to me because I've spammed you with 100 emails. So where should we start?
Well, let's start with the AI side of things, because it can link in very much to mental health, I think. I'd say that's an interesting start.
Okay, so we were talking about how measurement is crucial to drive performance. And you said that that's one of the potential uses of AI. So how's that? And is that something that's available to everyone at this stage? Because, you know, we've all heard of ChatGPT. Most of us have tried ChatGPT in one way or another, but that's a long way from having an AI tool that can actually scrape different data points and start to measure your success, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of tools that you can use to sort of help with sales forecasting, which I think is an important part of looking. But the thing is, it's about keeping something realistic. So AI is a good tool to help people do their job. But I think what's actually been talked about consistently at the minute, if you ever look at anything that's talking about AI, can we be more efficient? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it's increasing the load on salespeople, if anything, at the moment. We're not looking at it as a tool to help salespeople do their job. We're looking at it, how can we make it more effective so that we can sell more, so that we can do more? And I think that's a big danger for me from the off. That we're not actually even considering the other side of this. We're just saying, how can we make more? How can we sell more? You can use tools to forecast, but there has to be some element of human, consideration into this. What is the economy like? What is happening in the real world? What is actually a realistic thing for us to be, putting forth as targets, as objectives for our salespeople? I think that's probably the one big caution I would raise at this point. So, I mean, me and Andy have recently written something, about and Javier as well, Marcos, who's at Cranfield, and about, the different ways that you can use AI. So there's tons of tools out there. There's hundreds of tools right now. And it's just understanding your business specifically and then picking the right tools and then implementing it in a sort of, I would say, a straightforward, logical way, not just taking things at face value. That would be my take.
So isn't there a danger that the tools will be thought of first before the skills, and therefore, and I think this is what you're saying, it's adding to the stress on individual salespeople because they're being asked to use tools to scale their approach, when in fact the real problem is they need to learn how to have conversations effectively and build relationships.
Yeah. So like I say, AI should be a tool that we're using to help us to reduce our load and get us doing the things that we want to do to make our job better, not just for ourselves, but for our customers. That for me is very important. It shouldn't be the standalone. For me, sales will always be about people, and it's going to be a differentiator. Because everybody's going to have these tools available. They're going to become more and more available. There's been thousands and thousands of AI tools released since ChatGPT took off. So these are readily available. It's understanding what are right for you, your business, and the industry you work in and the customers you work with. So how can we maximize everything of them? There's hundreds of tools, thousands of tools. What ones are best for us, right? And for the people that are working for us.
My wife is running a social selling academy for women. It's run by women to empower women to re-enter the workplace and help eliminate the stigma associated with sales, but at the same time supporting positive mental health. And there's 3 women running it, and none of them would ever say they're sales people. Yet they are throwing themselves into learning these new skills and actually finding tools like GPT to help develop their narrative in their own minds, using the right prompt so that they can create text, messages that are basically their own intention, but just worded more eloquently. And they're finding that as a really useful tool.
Yeah. But I think it's also important to understand that, everyone's going to be using these, and you can't take the people out of sales. And this is something I'll keep coming back to. Everyone's going to have these tools, and it's going to create some sort of some level of standardization. It's only as good as the prompts you put in, but generally much of the prompts are going to be the same. So the same tone will probably be used generally within an email. You can obviously change it, but it's about understanding where is it, how good is it going to be for us? And then what do we need to do ourselves? So, some salespeople are telling me we're using these tools, but we're using it sort of as just a blanket overview to understand things a bit quicker, or do things a bit quicker. And then I'm tailoring it myself. So it just saves them time in that respect. These will probably become better, 10 years time, who knows where this space is going to be in terms of AI. It's rapidly developing. But again, if you think about the general premise of a unique selling point, the unique selling point sometimes already is down to people. So we can't move away from that fact. You know, we're not, sales isn't going to be run by a bunch of robots in 10 years.
No, but I think that one of the underlying trends is a human nature one, which is that people want to get something for nothing. So, you know, the beauty of AI is that where previously I would have to write individualized messages. Now AI can do it for me, which means that instead of spending a day writing 10 messages, I can spend a day writing 1,000 messages. Now, the problem, as I see it, is exactly the same problem that we had when email replaced physical mail, which was it was a cost issue as well as a time issue with that. But you strip away those barriers to volume, and people exploit that. So rather than sending 100 letters today, I'm going to send 10,000 emails today. Rather than place an advert in this magazine, which is hyper personalized, I'm going to place an advert everywhere on the internet because it's cheap for me to do so. And I think we're going to see the same thing with our AI. What we're going to see is that people ramp up the volume of things that they send, because, you know, many of the KPIs that we are driven by say that if you send X, you get X over 10 interactions. If you get X over 10 interactions, you get 10 of those, you get one proper conversation. If you have 10 proper conversations, you get a sale. Therefore, instead of starting by sending 10 of those things, I'm going to send 10,000 or 10 million of those things, because then I'll have this tsunami of people that come to me, all of whom will be people that I will be able to process. And that's every sales leader's dream, isn't it? You know, we're going to have more customers than we can deal with.
A continual stream of leads.
Yes, because no one's ever heard that before, have they? And I think the problem with this is, that, as you said, Dale, that this will become a standardized behavior, that everybody will be doing this. So all of a sudden, my competitive advantage of being able to send 10,000 messages a day is not a competitive advantage. It becomes a hygiene baseline that everybody's doing. But the other thing is that already we're having problems with our LinkedIn inboxes, our Twitter direct mails, and our email, where we are getting flooded by more and more of these robotized outreaches. Whether or not that's AI driven or just simply put it into your marketing automation tool, then it sends it out at volume based on a list that it has. And it's surely an inevitability that at some point down the road, you're going to be using an AI tool to email people like me, and we're going to be using an AI tool so that we don't have to read the emails that people like you are sending to us. And then what you've done is you've effectively removed humanity from the sales process.
I don't agree with that. To be kind of semi-controversial.
No, I was waiting for you not to.
There you go. But the only reason none of the technological things that have come out have actually made the change. And to Dale's point, it's about how humans use them, and actually now even more so how humans cut through that to have a meaningful, realistic conversation with other human beings. And let me take a step back. So I met Dale in Toronto this year, but you know his reputation as an absolute stellar researcher and data cruncher goes before him in a lot, and I mean that seriously. But the year before, I was at the GSSI when it was in Frankfurt, and there's a guy, Dale, you know the guy from Houston, and he put up this slide and he talked about sales tech, and he said, well, let's just go back and talk about marketing tech. And he said, there's about 10,000 titles in marketing tech right now. And he said, if you then look at sales tech, he said, I think he said there was about like 500. He said, but you can see where this is going, that fundamentally there's going to be as much on the sales tech side as there is on the marketing tech side. And none of it has actually solved the problems that we thought it was going to solve. If you take LinkedIn, and I realize I'm going into the lion's den to talk about LinkedIn here, but it's not solved the problem. It's just made everything quicker to the point of which some humanity or some differentiation and brand has to shine through. And that's where people are not getting it, I don't think. And they're fearing that AI is just going to be another tool that will not answer anything in terms of sales numbers, But the people that use it well, like the people that use Salesforce.com well, and the people that use LinkedIn well, will prosper, and those that don't won't.
Yeah. So I've spent 23 years in MarTech, so marketing technology and selling it, and I've seen that evolution happen right in front of my eyes. So many companies designing new applications to be more customer centric. And actually what's happened is businesses are left with 50, 60, 70 applications, and they can't manage the data in order to enhance the customer experience. And if sales tech can't, if the industry can't see that, I mean, it's an incredibly dangerous thing, because B2B does rely on human interaction more than B2C. And
yeah. Now, you know, I want to bring it back around to well-being. And I don't want to say none of it is new, but when I had my second job, I worked for a company called Barclays Mercantile, which was then became Barclays Asset Finance. And it was a great job. I loved it. It taught you to sell. Everything you did, you had to sell twice, if not three times, because you had to sell a prospective customer relationship to your own credit department. So you had to be really good at actually explaining why it was a good risk for the bank. Now, the part of Barclays Mercantile had a company called Highland Finance, and it spent all of its time lending to farmers. Now, I was in an office, I was in Manchester, but Highland Finance, you had a home office. And I don't know why, and I don't know how this came about, but somebody in HR went, let's have a look at actually the impact of technology. Now, bearing in mind that mobile phones weren't even, you had a pool mobile phone if you were really looking, you fought over it if you left the office. They worked out that Highland Finance had a 6 times mental health issue and higher divorce rate. And what they figured is you've got a home office, so you've had your tea or your evening meal, your dinner, depending on what part of the country you're from, how posh you are. And you go back into the office and turn your email on and turn your system on. And then roll forward to BlackBerries. Yeah, BlackBerries, brilliant. Have a little flashing light. You panicked, you dived in. What's happened is we've kept introducing now, I think, Dale, and I'd really like to hear your views on this, which is actually the real risk is not that technology will take over, but actually technology will imprison, entrap, and impair the mental health of people, because it's just salespeople, because it's just bombarding them and it's not adding anything to their lives.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I'm effectively, or my position on this is to use a football analogy, or soccer, if we got anyone here from America, is it's shifting the goalposts. Even Adam kind of alluded to this, now we're not sending 10, we're sending 1,000. So what's that actually going to do to our metrics, our outputs that managers are going to be assessing us against? They're just going to be saying, well, you haven't hit this number now. So the number just changes, right? They're still expecting you to be doing as much time. They're just expecting you to be doing it way more effectively. And I think this is part of the problem. I've spoke to a lot of salespeople who say, now one of my biggest annoyances is now I should be inputting in my CRM as soon as I finish with a customer. If it's not there within 2 hours, even if I've got back-to-back meetings, I'm still being questioned by my manager. And it's just adding to the stress. I know numerous salespeople who now have a work phone because they need to understand, they've been burnt out, and now they just want to separate the work from the home. Say, I'm not going home and working from it. So yes, the technology is a problem, I think, in terms of the mental health, because we now can't switch off. Work-life balance in a lot of companies, for a lot of people, is not a thing. They're thinking about it on weekend. It's, they're able to be contacted, and, this whole 24/7 customer service world that's appeared because of technology is only increasing pressure on people to be available in, what is sales is a customer-centric role. So the customer may argue, well, why are you not here if I've got an emergency? So it's one of these things that we just need to manage carefully. Otherwise, we're going to increase this burden on our workforce.
I think but the BBC said must have been about 10 years ago, they came up with a new word called "work holiday." because there's no such thing as a holiday. And actually, I've just come back from Crete, and it's like the amount of people that were on the phone, walking by the pool, or out on bagging their sunbed in the morning, but actually doing their email. And it's like, oh, that's a bit bizarre, and you don't notice it until actually it didn't. Apart from SalesTV, I refused to do anything on holiday. My wife didn't do any calls for the first time in 25 years, and it was really, really interesting to actually notice other people. Well, if you're doing it, it's not as obvious.
Yeah, I like Alan Clark's comment there about using AI to surface how high performers are operating for those, average sellers. But I do want to question that, because depending on who that individual is, and we've talked about Gen Zs at the start of this call, that may or may not put added pressure on the individual. I mean, I joined a call yesterday. The Sales Health Alliance have created this thing called Project Mamba to support positive mental health in sales. And there was a young lady on that call, a seller living in Jamaica, and she all she cared about was having freedom to think about what she wants to do to sell more effectively. And she doesn't want to be continuously forced, put in this box and forced down this track.
Yeah, we did some work, some research when I was in corporate in terms of what was, I've said this before, we had 7 people of 66 salespeople that always did 200%. So we did some research in terms of what were those 7 people doing. And when we went to the other 59 people and said, okay, you should be doing these things, they said, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not everyone can be a top seller, and sometimes we think about the best practice. Now, best practice is a good thing. Don't get me wrong; it gives some people some general benchmark.
But best practice, Dale, means that you're doing the same thing as everybody else.
Yes,
There's no competitive advantage.
Yeah, but there has to be an element of tailoring, because not everything's going to work for everyone the same, right? You may be dealing with different people, especially if you're working across different cultures or different territories. You could be dealing, across different enterprises. So what small medium enterprises need versus a large corporation is completely different. So best practice is a very vague statement, and I understand where Alan's coming upon, but as Alex is saying, there has to be the autonomy to be able to kind of work it. But literally just pulling up on his point there, yes, you should want to learn, but it should be understanding a branch things. What is everybody doing? And what can I use myself that will fit me in my specific situation for the company that I work.
And I think, Dale, quite often what we do and what COVID has highlighted is the fact that we come to work, but we also have home lives. It may be that we have young children that we to look after, or it may be we have elderly parents that we have to look after. We all come to work with different issues, and sometimes we may be in a situation where we actually can't take on those things because our home life is dictating how much time that we can spend. There's only 24 hours in a day. And there's only so much we can do. And to answer the question, why wouldn't you want to learn? Some people don't want to. One of the things that came out of what we found was that A players always went on training every quarter, and all the B players said, "I don't have time for it." Yeah,
that's brought up a memory for me, Tim. It was a long time ago now, maybe 15, 18 years ago, where I was working on an RFP as a sales rep. It was a big RFP, but I got a phone call to say my mum had collapsed. And so the first thing I did was jump in the car and drive up to see her.
Yeah.
On the way back, my managing director called me and said, "Where the hell are you? This RFP has to be submitted." And I said, "I'm ever so sorry." But I felt like I had to take on the burden of completing the RFP because I was under so much pressure. What he opened my eyes to was I should have communicated with the team and delegated the role to someone else. But at the time, I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah,
delegation is a critical skill that nobody's taught, Alex.
Yeah.
I think though that one of the is, everybody on the in the audience will know that we at DLA Ignite are social people, and one of the challenges that I see, or the disappointments that I see with organizations using social, is that they're using it to scale the wrong thing. So people are so focused on the numbers of people that you outreach to, so focused on the number of messages that you send. And social is an almost limitless database of people. And that's the bit that's being focused on, rather than trying to focus on the humanity of this. Actually what I'm trying to do is to identify people that like me, people that want to do business with me, people with whom I share a huge amount of common ground, because that's the basis on which I can build a relationship, not a commercial relationship at this stage, but a relationship. And we said before, every organization claims to want to do have relationship based selling, but they don't. They want to do selling, and if you get a relationship out of it as well, that's a great thing, because it's all about the number. And I think that part of the challenge is that that when organizations treat, let's pick LinkedIn as an example, they treat LinkedIn as a database with 950 million names on it, they're missing the very point of these social networks, because it's not about 950 million people. It's about the people that want to do business with you.
Yeah, and I want to bring this sort of forwards, because a lot of this conversation is all about, all right, being a top seller, productivity, maximizing performance. And now I put up some stuff on Gen Z, and I'm going to be blunt with everyone here. I see about 1,000 of these plus a year. They don't care. They don't want to be top performers, top sellers, the majority of them now. So this is a reality for sales and sales management, and a reality for many jobs coming through. If you look at what young people want, they want jobs that's stimulating, that looks after their well-being, that has an inclusive work environment, is something with purpose. Money isn't a thing, but it's not the be all and end all for a lot of these. Like, generation has changed. In reality, it's completely changed. And if we don't go with it, what's going to happen is your turnover as a sales company is going to massively increase. We're already at 18 months as an average rep turnover. I'll tell you, it'll half with a lot of these people, because we say we want resilience. They are not resilient. They don't like this whole cold calling thing, and they don't care for this top performer. They want a good amount of money, but they really care about work-life balance and well-being. So this is going to be a thing going forward. The mentality has to shift. Unfortunately, that's just going to be a reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Go on,
I
Tim.
think that's interesting from Ben Dorks that was on last week. I spent a lot of time with the idea gen, and James King and I were presenting at a conference, and he actually put up the live example, and that live example was very much about how you treat young people. And I had a guy in the UK who went, I want to travel. I want to go out there and see the world. And actually, I really quite like surfing, so I want to go to places where I can surf. And he said, I think I'm going to end up in Australia. And they went, fine. And he went, after I've done that, can I have a job? And they went, there's absolutely no reason why not. And he went off for a year, travelled the world, ended up in Australia, and then rejoined the company. And it was their forward thinking to go, absolutely go with our good grace, but actually we'll welcome you back somewhere around the world into one of our many offices. And I think that's absolutely, to Dale's point, what people have got to look at. Purpose, legacy, and in sales, it's pretty bloody hard to have a purpose in a lot of stuff. So if you're selling defibrillators, or you're selling drugs, or you're selling other stuff, your purpose, or you're selling wind farms, your purpose is quite easy. Yeah, you can connect to it. If you're selling Heinz baked beans, then fundamentally it's a bit tougher. And I think that, to Dale's point, is then actually you've got to work in those companies to figure out how you give those people paid time off to follow their aspirations and their give backs. How do you say, listen, selling razor blades ain't that great, got it, but actually here's 2 weeks off to go and give back to any charity or anything that you want. And here's some time to do that. And I think that, coupled with also the language that Dale's pointed out, is that we're all quite looking over the horizon backwards sort of thing, looking backwards. And we don't practice any of the stuff that Dale's talking about. So we'll send, how many leaders send a freaking email at 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Stop. Why? All you're doing is saying to everybody, regardless of what you talk about work-life balances, I'm expecting you to have read this. Send it in the morning.
And Dale, I agree with you. I actually think it's more than Jen said. I actually think you'll find there's millennials. I have a 28-year-old who's quit sales, who's just about to go on a cycle ride because he quit his job. He doesn't want all of the rubbish that comes with sales. What you're going to sell this week and he doesn't want all that. And I realize that there's people out there that say, well, that's a red flag. I wouldn't hire them. Well, don't hire them. But what you'll find is that there's the talent pool that you will be able to hire from will get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
I think that Tim, what you raised there is the absolute existential crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I just want to point out, we're looking at that, even if you have top sellers, right? Just because they are selling more there and then doesn't mean their mental health isn't deteriorating, and that increases their risk of turnover. So sales companies at the moment, there is, I had a statistic, something like the average turnover rate is 35%. And just under half of companies have it over 30%. So these are all costs. It takes time to hire people. It takes time to recruit people. And all of this is lost cost opportunity. There is money in training people, hiring people, and all of this. So most people will sit there and say, okay, well, they're not performing as well because we're not pushing them as much. So we're losing money. Okay, but take the holistic perspective, right? Are you performing better or worse in terms of the overall costs versus over time what the salesperson's bringing to you? So I think we need to consider more of a long-term approach in sales going forward. And this is going to be a long, hard grind to change a lot of people's opinions on this.
Yeah. Looking at, we've talked in the past about the lifetime value of a salesperson, how that connects with cost of sale, cost of customer acquisition. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's a really complex topic, but what are your thoughts on how business leaders, sales leaders should start looking at this problem? In terms of, I'm thinking about the, well-being and trying to look at this problem through the well-being lens. And when I say well-being, that's well-being of the salesperson, but equally it could be the well-being of the of their customer, the buyer, because we know that cold calling and cold emailing upsets people. We know that for a fact. Should they start with looking at this problem through the well-being lens, do you think? Or is there another way to start looking at this?
I think you've got to look at it in terms of the human being. It's technology has sped things up to such a degree that actually not being in the technological race is a differentiator. Good friend of mine, I talked about that, Yvette Hensel Bell. I actually got into her office because I actually wrote a letter.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to LinkedIn, but that was the point. She said, everybody's trying to get into my office. And she said, and I actually asked a great question, which is what piqued your interest to take this meeting? She went, I haven't had one of these in 10 years.
Yeah. Handwritten thank you note for the time. Yeah, that sort of stuff is differentiating today.
And that's the point, that personal brand change is really, really important. And I think that's what sales leaders have got to look at this now and go, I'm going to hire people. How do I hire people that have got a curiosity and a growth mindset, who have got a genuine openness, and fundamentally, how do I then put a culture in place that allows those people to be reflective, which I think somebody on this call said earlier on, which is, reflection is the tool to coachability. It's like, how do you think you did in this environment? What do you think you might want to do differently? Not rote training, which is the best practice thing, Tim, which you said, which is if everyone's doing it, no one's doing it, and no one's got a best practice. And I think leaders have got to now look at this and go, if I'm going to be a sales leader, I'm going to be a sales leader somewhere. And maybe I want to start changing this problem in my company now, even though I won't be here.
Yeah, and it's a tough sell to leaders because, a lot of them are going to be thinking about profit and performance. So it's again about kind of reframing that and saying, all right, well, actually long-term performance and as a place to work, retention, hiring, all of this stuff has to be taken into account. And make no mistake, there's a great deal of well-being washing, which you may have seen as a term similar to greenwashing, the well-being side. At the minute, it's seen as we'll do it, but as good as it gets us PR. Even companies, for example, I know many people who have worked for Salesforce, which is up there in terms of the best places to work, have said, that it's still a high-performance environment, dog-eat-dog, and work-life balance. It's just not great, and therefore I left. So it's coming, and it's something we can't move away from. We can't avoid.
You can still have
Look on, Alex.
Well, you can still have a high-performing organization without the dog-eat-dog. That's the thing.
Yes.
Well, you're into this really big and Pandora's box, which is defined performance, and that's not to be contentious, but if I look at one of my panel who's reviewing my doctorate, Wendy, she's brilliant, and she's an organizational performance academic, and as she keeps reminding me, one definition of performance in Oracle is very different to potentially the definition of performance in Adidas, and therefore, how do you get that parity of saying that one person in that company is better performing than another? There's so many things that we measure that aren't potentially the right thing. And this is really interesting. This is a paper. It's called Can't Leave It Behind. And I wanted to bring it up because Dale will probably kind of know this pretty well. And it's written by a guy called Peasley et al. And they released it actually in 2020. And what the conceptual model is that actually, and I wanted to raise this because you brought this up, Tim, which is salespeople have been taxed and stressed, but they're already stressed because of their personal life. So if you look at the left-hand side of this, personal health and all of these other things. So when they walk through the office door, there's already a burden on them, and we potentially accelerate that. And this is actually a model that somebody went out. I mean, Dale, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm obviously familiar with this. To a point, yes, you have to understand, and I think this is the part of sales management where we really need to be thinking about. There's a difference between a leader and a coach, as someone who will, manage you versus someone who will take you forward. And a lot of people want development. They want, and they have different things going in their life. So a tailored approach to managing your salespeople is extremely important. And sometimes we're promoting the wrong people just because they're high performer. But it's a different skill set to be a manager. So you really have to understand what's going on in people's work lives, what's happening at home as well. Are they in a good position to be working? And if they're not in a good position to be, customer facing for one reason or another, then perhaps that's not the best job for them to be doing there. Or perhaps they need a little bit of time to go and evaluate, find their solution, get their head back in the right place. And they shouldn't be punished for having to do this if there's genuine reasons for this. You feel stressed. Everyone feels stressed at a point, but the point to which it becomes detrimental and leading up to that are where we've really got to be like kind of laser focused and really know our people. And managers have to know their people to give this forward.
Yeah. And that's again, I was at another conference in Holland. I always seem to go to conferences in Holland because they have free drugs. But did I say that out loud? Somebody asked this once on a panel, and they went to me, how do you do sales coaching? And I asked the question, define coaching. Because in sales, we read the All Black book, don't we? Alex Ferguson way of coaching. I mean, you're a
Shouting at people.
soccer fan, yeah. And you go, that guy's that coaching is in my really limited understanding. So I'm aware of what I don't know. There's lots of different types of coaching, and all the way at the end of it is you can coach somebody and they turn around and go, you know what, Tim, thanks for that, but I don't want to work here anymore. So how do you cope with that? Of course, sales leaders don't coach in that way because they don't want to ever hear somebody go, actually, I don't want to work here anymore because I think it's crap.
Because it takes such a long time to get somebody new in and ramp them up.
Yeah. So and I think Donald's got a cracking point here, which is, and I just want to link it in a slightly different way, which is, have we always tried to get a salesperson in a particular mold with particular attributes? And the reality of it is buyers, procurement and buyers and everybody that actually makes decisions aren't hired in a particular mold. They're different human beings with different stresses, different personalities. And isn't it time, to Donald's point, that we actually looked and went, actually, we need neurodiverse, openly different diverse organizations, gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and all of those things to represent the customers that we sell to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Extremely important.
Yes.
I think the other thing is, and your point about promoting people, high performers get promoted into management. The problem is that for most people, or for most organizations, independent contributors or individual contributors sit at the bottom of the pile. Whether or not they're earning $1 million a year because they're outperforming salespeople or not, the next layer up is a manager of a small team, and the next layer up is a manager of managers of small teams. And the problem is that to get recognition and to get often more money, you need to climb that corporate hierarchy. And the problem is that you can be the ultra high performing salesperson who's a brilliant independent contributor, or individual contributor, but unfortunately, they're not manager material. And then somebody else gets promoted, and that person, the person that's the high performer, says, so I'm the best performer here, and yet I've been passed over for promotion. I'm leaving. So we have an issue here with the cultural nature of the hierarchy within organizations. Anyway, we're almost at time. And your idea, Andy, was that we were going to set a task or give a little gem to people each day. And Alex, you had a really good idea for what we were going to say today to people in the audience.
Well, go on, Tim.
Yeah, I'm just passing the ball to you.
Yeah. I do, or I thought I did, but the topic of this conversation seems to have gone in a very different direction to what I thought.
So okay, we can lurch and go in a different direction again.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So I'll share the idea, but maybe we want to do something related to the chart that Andy showed and talked us through.
Okay.
Is there a challenge? Is there a question we can ask our viewers in relation to this topic and that chart, rather than me bend and flex to a different topic?
Okay. Well, you can bend and flex to a different topic next time. So here's the chart.
Yeah. So as a researcher, what I would say here is, and thinking holistically, we're missing the management side of this. Right, salesperson is one side, but we also can help people with their individual mental health by providing good climates. So there's a managerial aspect of this. This is all relevant, it's all important, but we need to understand how can we as managers understand our people and help them to manage their mental health and provide them with the tools to be dealing with these stressors. And that might be changing the role, or it might be giving them support in the right times, or it might be giving them solutions, but everything has to have buy-in from the salesperson. I think that's the important thing for me.
So is the question or the challenge to ask your team members how they're feeling?
Yeah. I think so. I think collaboration is really important. If you think of sales and buyers, you have to get their buy-in, right? If they don't have the feel of that sort of collaboration, then you're just telling them something, and that something might not work for them. So it's getting to understand that tailored approach. What works for you? How can we help you deal with what you're going on with, the best way that fits you?
Yeah, I think what we could do is put a little questionnaire out there and actually ask people where does your manager sit in actually reducing stress, or what role do they actually have in reducing stress and helping you with your capability to learn. So we'll put something out and see what
sounds like a LinkedIn questionnaire thingy.
Yeah. So we'll post that in the group. So anybody in the audience that hasn't joined our LinkedIn group, please do so. That wraps us up very nicely for today for the EMEA show. So thank you to everybody on the panel, particularly.
Some fantastic comments today from the audience. And Dale, thank you so much.
Yeah, I owe you another pint there, Darren.
I thought it was a £5 you gave people.
Not in Bournemouth.
That's less than a pint, isn't it?
Hang on a minute. I've only mentioned Ben Dorks once. So Ben Dorks.
So everyone in the audience, thank you so much. Hopefully you can all join again next week. And if you're free this afternoon, please join our Americas show. Until then, and until next week,